Hi everyone, this is Matt from Great Neck Library, and I'm going to be hopefully doing a few tutorials for you guys on Unity and how to make games in this game engine, but mainly focusing on audio since that's pretty much what I do. So what we're going to learn in this course is we're going to be doing some basics of Unity, what the platform is, navigating around it, how to make game objects and levels, how to import a character and move the character around. We're going to be doing, like I say, mostly audio and also some C# coding. And yeah, so if you're interested in, making games, or if you're a game designer who doesn't really know much about the audio side of things, then hopefully this will give you some pointers and get you started into making your own games in Unity. So let's get started. You can follow along, pause the video when you need to go back and all that kind of stuff. But we'll start right here. So if you're going to go to Google, and in Google you're going to type Unity Hub. Once you type that in, you search it, click on the top result, and you get to this page. Now what you want to do is download Unity Hub from here, okay? It's a pretty straightforward process. Click download, it's going to go ahead and do it for you. As you see here, I've already got it downloaded, so I don't need to. So what I'm going to do is minimize this. And I'm going to close this project because I'm going to show you how to do it from the beginning. When you get Unity Hub and you've installed it on your system, you're going to double click it to open it. And now what will happen is, if you're installing Unity for the first time, this is going to be completely blank, okay? So don't worry about this. These are all the projects that I have open right now that I have on my system. What you need to do first is actually install a version of Unity, because the Unity Hub is just a place where you manage your projects, manage your installs. You can also take a look at a lot of projects and a lot of tutorials in the Learn section. So there are a lot more things about graphics, things about code here, using the interface again. I'm going to go over a lot of that today, but if you're interested in extra tutorials, this is a good place to go. But what you want to do is go to the install section, and this is the point where you're going to install your first version of Unity. So I've got quite a few installed here for various different projects. What you want to do is click add, and then they're going to give you suggestions of the latest releases. So you can go ahead and click on the latest release, which in this case is this one right here. And then once you've done that, you click next, and you should be good to go. So again, I'm not going to do that because, I've already got plenty of versions installed. I don't really need one more. Once your version of Unity is installed, you'll see it in here. What you're going to do to start a new project is you click on the Projects tab. You're going to click New, and it's going to bring you to this screen right here. So what we want to do for this tutorial is you want to click 3D. It's already selected, but select 3D. Give your project a name. So I'll call it Unity Audio Tutorial, and then just give yourself a location. So in my case, I could just add it to this folder. Here, select folder, and then create. So right now it's going to create my project for me, a completely blank project from scratch. Okay, so once your project has been set up, you should get something that looks a little bit like this. Now your layout might be different to mine because I have my own kind of preset that I use. If you want to change the layout, you go to the right here, and that's going to give you a bunch of different options. So feel free to experiment with these different viewpoints, but right now this is the way I like it to look. So let's see what we can do then and start getting some things into this level. So right here, this is your scene view. As you can see, it says scene right here. So this is where you're going to be doing most of your actual building of the game. And this is what your game view looks like. Okay, so this view is what this camera is seeing right now. Okay, so before I show you like how to move around in the game engine, I just want us to create a piece of geometry just so we can see how we're moving around relative to things, because right now it's completely blank. You can't really tell where you're going. So what we're going to do, let's go to game object, let's go to 3D object, and then click plane. Okay, so as you can see, we have this plane right now in the game, and now we can kind of move around it and get used to it that way. So if you're a gamer, you shouldn't have too much trouble navigating around this. It's pretty much like a first-person shooter. So if you hold the right mouse button and move it around, you get to just adjust the view without moving, forward, backwards, sideways, or up and down. You're just changing. Imagine this is just tilting your head around. So that's holding the right mouse button down. In order to move around, what you want to do is you want to hold the right mouse button down and press W to go forward, S to go back, A to go left, D to go right. And that's as you're holding the right mouse button down. You've got to keep it held, okay? So what I can do is move around this, move forward and back, just by holding the right mouse button and then using those 4 keys, W, A, S, and D. Now, if you want to go up and down, straight up and down, you can hold the E button to go up, the Q button to go down. Okay? So movement, just so you know, is relative to which direction you're facing. So right now I'm facing downwards in the game world, but if I press W, A, S, and D, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to go forward and back because this is the direction I'm looking, right? So I'm technically going down here. Okay, so remember we're holding the right mouse button in order to do this. And the same thing with Q and E. Pressing Q and E goes up and down, but relative to which direction I'm looking in. Okay, so feel free to play around with those. If you want to pause the video for now, just experiment, get used to these controls. Pretty straightforward, but it just takes a little bit of getting used to. You can also use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So if you roll the mouse wheel forward, you'll zoom into wherever you're looking, zoom out, you'll move away. Okay, so, and again, that depends on where you're looking. Okay. Okay, so we have a piece of scenery, and now we have this camera right here. So as you can see, this camera, this is how it will look in the game. This is what you will see when you start to play the game. Okay, so if we move this camera, you'll see the game view changes. All right. So this camera is where the play is going to start once the game begins. So if I wanted to move the camera forward, I would do so like this, and I can see what's happening by how this game view looks. Okay, and if you want to experiment with maximizing, minimizing these screens, you can. It's often a good idea if you have 2 monitors to drag this one to a separate monitor so that you've got plenty of room to, plenty of screen room to see what you're doing in the game. Okay, so that's the camera. This is what the camera is going to see. So we've kind of got used to moving around a little bit. We've seen what the camera does. We've seen how to move the camera around. Now let me just explain what these arrows are right here. So these are basically, when you've got a game object, these are what you use to move it. Okay, so right now, these pointy arrows mean that I can move this. Okay, I can move it up. Blue means I can move it down. Red to the side, etc. Okay, now if we click on the plane, we get the same arrows and they will do the same things. So I'll be able to move this up and down, be able to move it across in all 3 dimensions, right? So this is why we have a 3D scene right now. So we can use all 3 dimensions. A good practice that you can get used to is resetting what's called the transform of an object. So the transform is basically what this right here. It's the coordinates in 3 dimensions of an object. So right now I kind of want this to be at 0, 0, 0, just because it makes things easier in the long run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the transform parameter of this object. So when this object was created, we got these particular attributes with it. We got a transform, which is its location. We got a mesh renderer, which gives it its texture, and we got what's called a mesh collider, which later on we're going to find out what that means. But basically it allows other objects to come into contact with this and know that it's an object, and it will be affected by things like gravity and collisions. But we'll work on that later. So to reset this transform, you're going to click this cog, small little cog in the right hand side, and you're going to press reset position. Now as you see, it moved slightly and all our coordinates went to 0, 0, 0. So now this is exactly where I want it to be. Okay, so we have a plane. It's in the right position. So now what we want to do is get an object to interact with it. All right, because right now if we just played this game, which we can, if I press the play button, all that's going to happen is this. This is the game. You can't control anything, you can't move anything, because right now all we have is a camera and a plane. We have no code, we have no other objects. So we need to add those in order to make something happen. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to the Unity Asset Store, which you'll find probably up here in your view, and we're going to download a player character into this game for free. So you click on Asset Store, it'll load up. Now you want to search for assets. Okay, what we can search for is third person, and you can find, you're more than welcome to buy any one of these controllers, but if you want a free version, you can click on this one right here. So it's made by Invector, and it's called Third Person Controller Basic Locomotion Free. Okay, so when you click on it, you'll be able to download it. So you're going to click download, and I'm going to have to log in. So if you haven't created a Unity ID, you can create one. Okay, so once you've logged in, we'll try downloading it again, and here we go. Okay, once it's downloaded, you'll get a box. The box changes from download to import. So let's go ahead and import it, and that's going to import it into this current project that we're on right now. So if you wanted to use this in a new project, you'd go to the store, you'd search for it again, and when you came to this screen, it would already be downloaded. So all you'd have to do is click this button, import it into the current project. So let's do that. Okay. Has a lot of stuff that it wants to import in this project. So I'm not sure exactly which ones we'll need fully, but I'm just going to import everything just to be on the safe side. So once that's finished importing, you'll see in this folder right here, we now have in assets, our assets folder, as well as this scenes folder, we have this, and this contains all the information for the third person controller character that we just imported. So let's go back to our scene. And what we need to do is just drag this into our scene. So we can go to, we open the folder up, we go to prefabs, and here it is. So let's just drag this third person controller into our game. And let's put him right there. Okay, so now third person controller's in the scene. And as you see here, what's created in this hierarchy are all the objects that are currently in this scene. So we have the main camera, which we started with. We have this directional light, which we started with, so that's automatically put in. We created this plane, and we also created this third-person controller just now. So everything that we create in the scene is going to get added into here, with some exceptions, which I might cover later, but that's not important. Just think of this as as the main folder for the scene. So we have the controller, and we should, if we play, be able to move the controller around. Let's take a look. Yeah, okay. So all I'm doing is using W, A, S, and D. I can press spacebar to jump, but otherwise I can move this guy around. Okay, so really we've not done anything crazy so far. Oops. So there he goes. And see, this is why gravity is a good thing, and this is exactly why we have a collider. So if this thing wasn't a collider, right? Let's just turn it off and see what happens. There he goes. See him fall through? And that's because the game no longer recognizes this plane that we created as something that's worthy of colliding, right? So this supports him because it's a collider. If we turn it off, he's going to fall straight through it because it doesn't recognize it. Okay, so what I want to do is I want the camera to be behind this guy, and I want it to follow him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my main camera onto him like this. Okay. As you can see, it's gone a little bit crazy because I started the camera in the wrong position. So it's kind of freaking out a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an adjustment to this camera. I'm going to drag it, and then I'm going to press the E key. Okay, so we're not holding down the mouse button this time. I'm just pressing E, and that will give me this. I'm trying to make you see it a bit better. Gives you this kind of spherical thing. You can still kind of see the lines, right? There's a red line, a blue line, a green line, and this is the axis that the camera's going to rotate. Okay, so if we press the W key, we get the arrows, which move the camera. If we press the E key, we get this sphere, which rotates the camera. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to position my camera in a position that I get a nice view behind the player, behind the character, sorry. So let's see. Let's just make some adjustments. Like this maybe. And I definitely want it a bit further up. Maybe further up, and then maybe pointing down a little bit so I can see it. All right, let's take a look at that. Okay, that's a little bit better. The character's very sensitive to move, so it kind of spins around a little bit crazily. But we have the camera behind the player. It's following him around, which is what I want. So there we go. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can make this a little less sensitive. So if we go to the third-person character controller, I'm gonna see if I can turn his the speed that he's rotation speed. So his walk speed's good, running speed, rotation speed. So let's turn that down to maybe 5, not 516, nope, 5. And let's see if that makes any difference. Oh, that's much better. Yeah, there we go. All right, so now when the character turns, when I use A and D to turn the character, it's not spinning around like crazy. It's much easier to control. All right, very good. So we have this guy in our scene, and we have the plane for him to walk on, and I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger. So let me show you another way. I'll actually show you 2 ways to make objects bigger. So what we can do, the first way, is we can use tools in this scene itself to drag, and that will expand and change the object. So we can I already taught you the shortcuts to these keys, right? We have the arrows, which move things around. So we have this, the arrows where I can move up and down across all three planes. We can do that. And let me just go ahead and reset that again. Okay, so remember, we just go to this, we reset position, it goes back to normal. We also have the E key, which rotates things along whatever axis they're on. So this would rotate it like this, etc. Right? Again, reset rotation this time. Okay. And the next one would be the R key. So the R key will bring you these cubes with the same colors, right? The colors just represent the axis that they're on. As you see up here, x-axis is red, z-axis is blue, y-axis is green. Okay. Now, if you want to make this plane bigger in whichever dimension, all we're going to do is click and hold with the left mouse button and drag. And as you see, the plane gets bigger and smaller based on how far I drag. So I'm going to do the same along any axis, and I can even do the same. So a plane is different. I can't do this on the y-axis because it's a plane and it only has a very specific. As you can see, it's ultra thin. It doesn't actually expand. But if I wanted to create like a cube, I could do that. So you know what? I'm actually going to do that. And again, if you come up to here, if I wanted to reset the scale that I just edited, go right there and I can do that. Okay, so that's how to reset things if you mess up. Like if I did this and like I didn't mean to and whatever, I just like, oh, it's easy enough. Click here, reset, we're good. So now that's a way to edit things within this scene. So I showed you to move things, to rotate things, and to resize things. You can also do the same if you have a very specific amount and say the scale, for example, on the x-axis, you wanted it to be 5 times as big as it is. Well, at the minute it's 1, 1, 1 in terms of scale. What I can do is I can just put in any number here, and there we go. Automatically updates it with the new scale. Okay, so that's now 5 times as big as it was previously. So let's say maybe 3. Press tab to go across. The y-axis won't change because it's a plane, so I'll leave that, but the z-axis 3, there we go. And I can do the same with this as well. So rotation, which is again using the sphere in the scene, I can put in whatever I want into this. So if I wanted to rotate it 45 degrees along the x-axis, that's what would happen. Okay, and I can just reset that by pressing 0, or on the z-axis 30 degrees. Okay, so that's how you can quickly rearrange geometry in the scene, just by either editing it using the tools in here, or just by going in and editing the tools in here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this guy. And I'm going to go ahead and move him back. So I just selected the third person controller in here. As well as in the scene, you can click things specifically in the scene. So if I want to select the plane, I could just click the plane. If I want to click the player, I could just click the player. Once you start to get a lot of stuff going on over here though, you want to use this to select things. So if I wanted to select the plane, I could just select this and it brings up everything that I need over here. Right, so these are all the attributes that the plane has right now, which again is the collider, the renderer so we can see it, and also the transform. As you see, if I turn off the mesh renderer, that's what happens. We essentially get, you see the mesh kind of structure of it, but if you look in the game, there's nothing there. So that's what you wouldn't see anything in the game. But I think actually he would still stand on it if I'm right. Yeah, he would, because the collider is still there, right? So this object still has the property of a collider. That's why I'm able to walk around on it, but we can't see it because there's no mesh texture to it. So yeah, that's just a little thing there just to point out. So we turn that back on. All right, so say I want to select my character. Say there's a load of stuff in this scene and it's hard to kind of find what the object that I'm looking for. It might be hidden, whatever the reason is. I can just come in here in the hierarchy, click it, and there we go. It's selected for me. All the attributes are here. Everything that makes this up is here. And you can feel free to experiment with the different speeds if you want to, like, you know, add extra gravity or make him run faster, walk faster, turn slower, faster. You can play around with all that stuff in here. But for now, I'm just going to move him back towards the back edge so I can see what's in front of me. All right, so we're doing pretty good. We have a plane, we have a character. So let's make some obstacles to put in his way. And then what we're going to do to finish off is add a sound in the scene. And then later on in some future lessons, I'm going to go through how to make realistic sounds, how to make a realistic environment using audio, because audio is very complicated. It sounds simple on the surface, and you know, some game designers kind of leave it as an afterthought, but if you have bad audio, you're not going to have a good time. So what we're going to do, let's just create some objects for this guy to move around. So let's go to game object. Let's go to 3D object, and then let's go to cube. Okay, so it's going to create a cube in the scene. As you can see, it's right here, and I'm going to move around using my my buttons. Now, as you can see, it's put the cube right here in some weird transform. So again, just to remind you, these numbers here are the coordinates in the scene that this object is placed at, right? So if I move this, you can see the Z number move up and down because I'm moving along the Z axis. Same with the X axis, same with the Y axis. Okay, so let's reset the transform, which is reset position. Now that's going to set it to 0, 0, 0, which is halfway into the ground. Okay, so I don't necessarily want that. Now, the reason it does that is because this plane intersects at 0, 0, 0, and it's the middle of the cube, right? It's the middle of the object. If you reset everything to 0, it's the middle of the object, right? It doesn't take into account the bottom of the object or the top or the sides. It's always going to intersect in exactly the middle in all dimensions, if that makes sense. So in order to place this on top of the plane to make it look good, I know that the scale of this is 1, which means that I know there's 0.5 of it above and 0.5 of it below. So in order to correct that, so it's going to be the y-axis, remember, because the y-axis is up and down, I'm going to need to put the y to 0.5. And now this should be sitting perfectly on top of the plane, which it is. Okay, so rather than putting in the numbers over here, I'm going to just be a little bit more creative and just drag them using the using these cubes here. So I'm going to press the R button, right? Remember the W, E, and R switches between these three selectors. W moves, E rotates, and R scales. So let me just reset the rotation. Okay, so let's scale this. So let's maybe put something like this. I'm going to press W, and I'm going to move it closer to him. And let's see. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Now then, to make things easier for us, I don't want to go in and create a million of the same objects by going to game object, 3D object, create, etc. What I can do is copy and paste the good old Control-C, Control-V. Okay? Now that's going to paste an identical object at the exact same position. So don't worry if you don't see anything new. This is actually the same thing, but it's on top of each. It's on top of the other one. So I'm going to move it so you can see. There we go. So now we see the two objects. So I'll put this one right here, and then I can do this again. I can copy, Control-C, Control-V. It makes another copy, and there we go. We have another one. It makes it a lot easier if you've got the same kind of object in your scene and you just want to, use the same thing rather than creating brand new ones from scratch. Okay, so now these things, as you can see, also when we create them, have properties themselves. So this one has a transform. Every game object has a transform. Okay, even if it's something that's not going to be used or you can't see in the game, it can be audio stuff, it can be bits of code, whatever it is. They'll always have a transform. And then you get specific parameters like the mesh renderer and the box collider that we've seen in this plane on these 3D objects. So again, the mesh renderer is giving texture to the object. So if I click that off, you can see that it vanishes, even though it's still there. So if I clicked this off, but played the game, he would still be able to run into the object, right? Because the collider is still there, remember? So the collider is what makes the object solid. Okay. So now we have a few objects, and let's just test it to make sure these objects are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I should be able to run into this and not be able to pass it. Yeah, so I can't run through it at all. Okay, I may be able to jump onto it. Yeah, I can jump onto it. Perfect. Okay, so this object is working as it's supposed to. Let's see if we can jump over. Yes, I can. Whee. Okay, so these objects are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is great. Now then, before I go on to the audio side of it, you can also, there are many different shapes you can create. You can create spheres, capsules, cylinders, quads, what are quads? I do not know myself. That's a good point. I do not know what quads are, but you can create them if you want to. But for now, what I want to do is I want to create an object that's going to play some sound in our scene, since audio is what I'm mainly going to be teaching. So in order to do this, what I want to do is to create an empty game object. So first I showed you how to create objects by going up here, right? To the toolbar, game object, 3D object, and whatever you want. You can also right click in the hierarchy, so make sure you're in this window, right click and create the same thing from any one of these. So you can create 3D objects, which we've done, 2D objects, and then lighting effects, a lot of stuff like that. Okay, various text things which will come in handy if you're using a user interface and you're showing lives and health and things like that. But for now, let's create an empty object. And we get a game object. And the only thing this has on it is a transform. Because it's a blank game object, the only thing that it needs right now is just the position where it is. That's it, nothing else. So let's, again, reset the transform. So reset position. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this so it's clear what it is. So I'm going to press F2 once it's highlighted. And I'm just going to call this audio source, since this is going to be playing some sound in our scene. All right, so what you can do with objects is not only can you use the components that come with them. So for example, the mesh renderer and the box collider in the cubes and the geometry, but you can add your own. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to click add component. And what we're going to press is, type is audio. And you'll see you get a bunch of different options right here. What we want is audio source. And imagine an audio source as just a speaker in the scene, right? A virtual speaker. And what it does is going to allow us to play anything we want, really. We can attach files to it. You can attach sound effects, we can attach music, we can attach whatever we want. So for this example, I'm just going to leave this right here, and I'm just going to select an audio clip randomly. Not randomly. I'm going to select an audio clip, and we're going to attach it to this audio source, and it's going to play when we play our game. So let me go ahead and find a file. Okay. Okay, so this guy's actually got his own sound. Let's just play this. Okay. So he came with his own sound, which is kind of cool. But what I'm going to do is import my own sound. I want a kind of longer sound. So maybe some ambience, give it the feel of something or other. So in the assets folder right here, down in the bottom left, what I want to do is create a new folder for all my audio stuff, all my audio files. And we're going to be building on this scene. So keep the scene nice and neat, and make sure to save it as we're going to be building on it. So let's create a new folder, and let's just call it audio. And for now, what I want to do is import an audio file into this. So I'm going to go ahead and find an audio file on my computer that might fit well in the scene. So let's see. Let's see, maybe, what about this? Outside ambience. That's me saying it. Let me see. Ambient. All right, let's pretend we're in a jungle. Why not? So I'm going to drag this audio file. I'm going to just drag it straight into the audio folder. You'll see the little plus sign that gets added to the mouse. I'm going to click, drag it. It's going to add it to the scene. Might take a few seconds because the file is actually a very big file. Maybe I should have chosen a different one. Okay, there we go. All right, so we have 3 minutes and 18 seconds of the Amazon jungle. And let's just play it. So to play a sound, you can just click the play button right here to test it out. All right, so it works, great. Okay. All right, so great, we have a sound, excellent. Now, in order to get the sound into the game itself, because right now all I did is upload it into the audio folder, but the game engine doesn't know that this is the sound that I want in the scene. It just knows that this file is somewhere in its folder system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to audio source right here. This is the audio source that we created. All right. Now you must make sure that you've added the component audio source. Just naming the thing audio source doesn't make any difference. That's just the name that you're using to keep track of it yourself. You need an audio source on it. So what you're going to do when you've highlighted this and you can see audio source here, what you can do is you're going to click and hold, drag the file into the audio clip box right here and let go. So now the game knows that this audio source contains this clip. Okay. Now there's some options down here. I'm not going to get into all these today. We're definitely going to get into a lot of these later on because they allow you to do some pretty cool stuff. What I want to check for now is make sure that play on awake is checked, which means that as soon as the game starts, then the audio source is going to go ahead and play. Otherwise, we have to set conditions for it to play. Like, for example, if the player triggers something. And again, we'll go into all that kind of stuff later. And I'm also going to set the loop to true as well, so that when the sound finishes, it restarts again. And you'll often find that in games if you have ambient noise. Say, for example, you're playing a game and you're in a jungle, for example. It would kind of suck if the ambience just stopped. It would be like, oh, what happened? And then the player gets taken out of the game. So we want to loop those sounds to keep the ambience going. So if I've done everything right, we have the clip. It's playing when we start the game and it's looping. We should, when we play, hear the sound that we want. And there it is. Okay. So right now, it doesn't matter where the audio source is. We're just going to hear the sound playing at the same volume wherever we go in the level. And that's fine for now. And I'm going to show you how to do specific things like make the player aware of where certain objects are in the scene. But that's for another lesson. But for right now, those are the basics of Unity. That's how to set up a scene, create a project, how to create some geometry for your player to walk on, how to get this cool free third-person character and move your camera onto him so you've got a good camera view, and how to import a sound into your scene and have it play. So there you go, not too bad. And next time I'm going to show you how to do 3D sounds. So what you're hearing right now is a 2D sound, which means that it's going to play through both your both sets of speakers or your headphones exactly the same no matter where you are. With 3D sounds, the volume's going to get louder the closer you are to an object, and it's going to get quieter the further away you are, and also is going to be coming out of the side of the speaker or your whichever side of your headphone based on where you are in relation to it. So let's just say for example that this middle block is something that's emitting sound. I should hear the sound coming straight forward if I'm in this position. If I'm facing away from it, the sound should sound like it's coming from behind me. If I'm facing this way and the sound's to the left of me, you're going to hear the sound through your left headphone more than your right headphone. And that's going to give you a clue as to where the object is without even having to look at the object. So that's kind of what we want to do in game audio and sound design. We want to make the player aware of where sounds are in the game, as well as creating a cool, fun experience. So anyway, that's for next time. I hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next lesson.